If you believe this should be a private call, please hang up and follow facility instructions to register this number as a private number. To consent to this recorded call, press 1. To disconnect, press 2. Thank you for using Securus. You may start the conversation now.
Hi, Mama.
Hi, how are you?
Welcome down the rabbit hole, friends. If you haven't followed the Shonda Vander Ark case for a long time now, you may not realize that Paul Ferguson has a long history of calling his stepmom Patricia. So let's talk about who Patricia is. Patricia Ferguson, who goes by Trish online, married Eric Ferguson after Shonda abandoned her kids and left them in the home so she could move away and start a new life. From my own personal research, I believe that Patricia was a family friend before Shonda ever moved away. And Shonda fought hard once her kids were taken by CPS to get her children placed with family members and friends. And from what I understand, Patricia is actually the one who took in Millie, Shonda's daughter, during the time that the kids were required to be in foster care. Eventually, and I don't know the breakdown of how this happened, Patricia ended up marrying Eric, and they merged their two families together. A lot of kids were in this home, and the pictures they've put all over social media make it look like they were a loving, caring, Brady Bunch kind of family. We're gonna find out that really wasn't the case. Eric and Trish did not take the best care of Shonda's kids. But it's my personal opinion that Trish was the best of all the adults these kids had in their life. And I do believe that Trish was doing her best on some level. She certainly made mistakes, and we're going to talk about some of that. But I really give Trish the benefit of the doubt. She's done a good job on these calls of showing Paul love, but also letting him know, like, I'm not okay with what you did. I see what you did to your brother, and it's not okay. I'm not going to just forget about it. I'm not going to push other family members to forget about it, Paul. Like, you are in a lot of trouble and you deserve it. And there's nobody else in Paul's life who's been able to tell him the truth like that. I think that Trish has been a truth teller to Paul and to other kids in the family for a long time. I believe she probably wanted a better life for them and for herself. And she's just been unable to make it happen. So let's get into it. We're going to listen to this call, but we're also going to review interviews with teachers, social workers, and family friends to really get a feel of what was going on with Paul and his relationship to women in his life.
I'd say good, but
What's going on?
So, I'm not sure if you know this, but there's been some people who have, I know I told you about the whole fan mail thing, but there are people who've actually been nice enough to actually like start texting me and whatnot. Not the guys from the HBO thing, just people. But one of them yesterday informed me that our calls have been posted on YouTube.
See, I told you not to trust people.
So this phone call with Trish is a call in which Paul is just informing her, like, hey, just so you know, like, I'm pretty upset about this. I found out that Zav girl got our phone calls, all the calls that I've made here at the jail, and she's putting them all over YouTube. And Trish doesn't fully understand. Like, she thinks that Paul's been talking to somebody who's been recording his calls and putting them on YouTube. But she lets him know, like, a really sage piece of advice. I told you not to trust anyone. And we're going to hear more sage advice from Trish than I think Paul gets from anyone else.
But it wasn't the person who told me. I know that much. It's no one I know, I don't think. You never know what people will do for fame and fortune. But she informed me over text about,
So we can hear that Trish is now hesitant. Like, she doesn't know what to say. Number one, she probably doesn't know what to say to him. Like, do I make him feel better? But she's also like, oh my God, we're being recorded and it's getting put all over YouTube. And Paul's just like, bah, 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 bah. Like, things just don't register with Paul like they do with other people.
asking if I knew about it, and of course, being in here, I didn't.
Yeah. So that's why I've not talked to anybody. I don't trust anybody.
So unlike Christy Blanchard, Gypsy Rose's, stepmom, who went out and made money and got a bunch of fame off of Gypsy's crime, Trish is she seems to want to keep private. She doesn't want to come out and do interviews, as far as we know so far. She's just someone who's completely shocked and disturbed by what happened. She doesn't want fame from this. She realizes it's disgusting.
The thing is, they have recordings from, I don't even know when, from what she said, of my calls with you, with Nolan, with her, and another one of my newer friends. But it's just...
So here's something I like here, or that I find interesting about Trish. She is not Paul's therapist. She is not going to be like, oh my God, Paul, I'm so sorry. What? You poor thing. That must be hard. No. She's just zipped her lips and she's like, yeah, what do you want me to do about it? You're in prison for contributing to the murder of your younger brother who I loved and cared for. And we're going to hear her say stuff like that. She's one of the only people who says it. I think in this silence, she's basically saying you have bigger fish to fry. Why are you calling me about this? I'm not going to be able to take away the fact that they're sharing your jail calls. Paul, there are bigger problems here.
I don't know. From what my lawyer told me today, the only reason that they record that stuff is for monitoring, for confession of a crime, I guess, to watch for warnings of suicide or some sort of escape attempt plan. I don't know.
I have to break in here and say it wouldn't surprise me in the least if baby girl Jenny isn't working on an escape plan right now for Paul. I'm really concerned about that woman, and we will be getting back into some really salacious crap that's come out about her, as well as some prison calls between Shonda and her new female prison fiance who's calling her.
Not, they don't just hand it out to the media for who knows what. I mean, first, whoever it is even has my commissary records.
Soaking in that silence. I'm sure that Trish is damn, what have I said on these phone calls? But I think as we go on, you'll hear that she's also Paul, what do you want? This is what's going to happen. This is your life now. And unfortunately, I think this is another example of how Paul really hasn't had people to intervene and try to lead him in a way that would be appropriate for someone who has his kind of mental issues. I think that parents of kids like Paul need to be trained on how to help them, on how to train the child to understand things around them, to not be so gullible, to understand the way that social norms work. And I don't think that any of the adults in his life really ever did did that. They never intervened in a way that really helped him. And this is where we are. Like, we have him committing this heinous, terrible crime and not even really understanding his part in it, not being able to cope in a way like that makes sense to any of us who have like the ability to understand the world around us.
But
I don't.
It's just stressful knowing that someone's trying to make their fame and fortune off of my misery and pain.
Well, you made poor decisions, but yes, people are going to use it. I don't know what to say. I love you, and I'm very sorry, but
yeah,
you did not treat your brother kindly.
To say the least, right? Once again, these calls give us insight into the fact that Paul Ferguson lives a life in which he's really only able to think about himself, and his lack of ability to empathize with other people or even really understand the way that other people see him or see his actions is quite an issue. Usually people who are psychopaths are very good at hiding these kinds of behaviors or thoughtlessness or a lack of being able to really truly empathize. They hide it. They're able to put on a show. And I don't think that Paul is capable of really putting on the show that I would expect from someone who was a little bit more with it than he is. I do think on the stand, like when he testified against Shonda, you get a very different feel for Paul. I think most people who just watch the trial are going to feel pretty bad for him. And then when you listen to the jail calls, you do realize that he's demonstrating a lot of traits of not giving a fuck about what he did. You know, just flat out. He doesn't really care. He is focused on himself. He doesn't want to be honest about what happened. He doesn't want to be honest about other things that have happened. And we're about to get into that shortly.
I know. I regret it.
I love you. Just
I love you.
keep your circle small. Stop talking to people. I know you like the attention. You've always wanted attention.
So Trish is calling him out, and not only calling him out, but trying to give him loving advice, despite the fact that she is unhappy, she's angry, she is in grief about Timothy. We've heard that in other calls. And the other children, like Millie and other kids that are going to be mentioned, they also grieved really hard about Timothy's death. So, I mean, I'm sure that Trish, it's hard for her to even give the kind of love and concern she's giving in this phone call, but she does it. She gives him the kind of love that a mother would give a child. And it's interesting to think about how she's his stepmom, you know. Shonda didn't give this kind of love and support to Paul, and certainly isn't giving it now. About the attention, I really want to break in here and talk about like what the hell was going on with this family. We're going to hear more. I'm about to bring in a bunch of interviews that were done with the other kids, with social workers, and other types of people who were kind of buzzing around the family, and we get to know a lot more about what was going on. But I do think there was a sincere problem going on here with too many kids for parents who were just not able or willing to be there for them. Flat out. Shonda, and we're going to hear more about the crazy shit that was going on. Shonda was living in her own perverted world. We're going to hear about it. Eric was almost totally absent. We're going to hear about it. I think Trish was the only one who was involved, and I imagine, and it's also based upon the interviews, that Trish was overwhelmed and couldn't get it all done. I believe that family was still living with like not enough money, food insecurity. I think there were a lot of really hard things going on, and there were too many kids for parents who were just not equipped enough to take care of them. It was that way with Shonda, and it was that way with Trish.
But now is not the time, and this is not the way to get it.
Yeah.
I just want to break in here and say, and I know this is not popular because Paul is a disgusting person in a lot of ways, but the reality is that Paul as a child and Paul now, they are both starving for attention. And when we read over like some of the teachers' reports, the teachers' interviews, all of those kids, especially Paul and Timothy, were starving for attention and affection. It was obvious. Timothy more so like he was very affectionate. Paul was more like maybe acting out, but he wanted attention. He wanted interaction with adults. Like there are definitely situations in which kids have a cup that you can never pour enough into, right? Like, you have a person that no matter how much you pour into it, it's never full. But I don't know that was Paul's situation. I think nobody was pouring into him. They weren't pouring into Timothy. They weren't pouring into Millie. Like, these people just weren't getting what they needed as children. And even now, like, I know that Trish is being maybe more kind than a lot of people would be, but still, her conversations with Paul are just very, like, it seems like she wants to get off the phone. I think that she's like, I love you and I care about you. I don't have anything else to say. I don't want to listen to your anime stuff. I don't want to hear, the people who act the most interested in Paul are always strangers in these phone calls. And, usually family is willing to like humor someone. They're willing to just be there to listen to what they have to say. And I don't think Paul has ever had that. And I don't think any of the other kids really had it either. So, she's right. Paul wants attention. He shouldn't be getting it, like he committed a crime. And yet at the same time, it's hard to realize that one of the reasons that he's turning so much to strangers is he doesn't really have a family that's going to support him. Yes, part of that is because of his behavior and because of what he did, but I don't think he ever had it before now either. Let's be honest. He didn't have it.
How have things been with you and Dad? I haven't been able to talk to you for a bit.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had bills and stuff come up.
You're good. You're all right. I figured it was something like that.
Yeah.
Real quick, I looked into it, and these calls are really expensive. I can give you more information another time. And I just want to break in and say, if you're not aware, Trish and Eric, they seem to have a lot of money problems. They got divorced and then got back together just to live with each other, and it seems like it revolves around being able to afford their lifestyle. And whenever Paul talks to them, they're constantly like, I'm working day and night. I have no money. I can't afford to fix my car. I can't afford to do these phone calls. Part of it might be that they don't want to talk to Paul, but I think they really are people who are struggling financially.
We're doing okay. Just hang in there. I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
I don't know that you still grasp the gravity of your actions and your part in things.
I know.
I'm not trying to upset you or make you frustrated. I love you.
I love you too. How's Dad been?
He's sick right now.
Oh, that sucks. Oh. Are you and Chelsea on speaking terms?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know whether she's trying to help or to throw me deeper into the water than I already am, but could you, tell her to stop contacting the judge?
I can't tell her that, Paul.
She's saying a bunch of things that aren't actually true. I couldn't tell you all.
Like?
I don't remember them, but...
Okay, so this is where we're going to get into it. It's about to get real. Chelsea, who is she? She's one of the older siblings of Paul. She's one of Eric's kids from a prior relationship, and she was interviewed by police directly after Timothy died. And this is what she had to say. Okay, So Chelsea, she is the older half-sister of Paul, and they share the same father, Eric Ferguson. Chelsea actually contacted the police herself after she found out that Timothy had passed away, and she ends up putting the police on speakerphone so that she and Millie, who's Paul's younger sister, full-blood sister, Shonda's daughter, that Millie and Chelsea can speak to the police together. Directly following the death of Timothy, Shonda called Nolan Ferguson, her son, and made him aware, but she didn't call or talk to anyone else. Many people started blowing up her cell phone, but she didn't answer, and that's probably because police had taken away the cell phone. According to Chelsea, Shonda told everyone that Timothy had passed away in his sleep. So this is what Chelsea had to say in that first interview. According to Chelsea, her mother, Patricia Ferguson, is Paul's stepmother. Patricia is the one who raised Timothy from the time he was 2, so right after he came out of foster care, up until May of 2021, and that's when he moved in with Shonda. Chelsea did admit that Timothy is severely, quote-unquote, autistic, but that he's high-functioning. He could take care of himself, but he doesn't like being touched, talked to, or any loud noises. I do believe that Timothy did display, certain behaviors. For example, some people have said he wasn't food stealing, he wasn't food hoarding, but we do hear from people like his sister and teachers that he did have a history of doing some of those behaviors. Now, it wasn't to the extent that people were so obsessed with it that they were punishing him for it, but he did have a history of doing some of that. So he didn't like being touched, talked to, and he didn't like loud noises. So we have a lot of sensory issues going on. His parents had to put a lock on his closet door because he would go in there at night and he would urinate. And he did that because he was afraid of going into the bathroom when it was dark. Chelsea says that Timothy did have trouble understanding some simple concepts. If you tried to explain to him why he couldn't do something, he just didn't understand. He did eat excessively, but didn't understand why it would make him throw up. To manage these behaviors at home, Timothy was in therapy. His parents received help from psychiatrists and from his school. He was on medication, specifically ADHD medication, when he was under the care of Trish and Eric, and Shonda took him off of it. Chelsea said that they had house rules and a reward system, and that worked pretty well for him. There weren't really any restrictions on eating or getting snacks. And Chelsea claimed that Patricia went above and beyond for Timothy, always trying to help him. And this is where Chelsea lets everyone know that Eric Ferguson was never really in the picture. He worked all the time and he never helped Patricia. So near the end of all of this, before Timothy went to go live with Shonda, Patricia was really done with it. And people have asked, why did Timothy get sent to Shonda? Well, Patricia is the stepmother. And from what we have been told, she was getting ready to divorce Eric. She was done with whatever shenanigans were going on with him. And I think she was of the mindset of I've got to find places for all of these kids. Maybe I can take my children, but I can't also take Eric's kids with me as well. So near the end of the time that they were together, Patricia went to her husband, Eric, and said that she needed help. She could not do all of this by herself anymore. She felt overwhelmed and depressed. And Eric's solution to all of it was that they needed to send Timothy to live with Shonda. And obviously they sent Paul as well. And this is when the police asked Chelsea if there's anything else that they should know. And Chelsea let law enforcement know. She doesn't know how involved Paul was in the situation, but he is the biggest bully she has ever met in her life. And he found genuine joy in tormenting Timothy whenever possible. She fully believes that if Paul was involved in this, he was fully complicit on his part. She does not think Paul was forced or coerced. He was questionable before he moved in with Shonda. And then Chelsea informs the police that Paul moved out when he was 18 years old. He had been living with Patricia and Eric up until then, and he was sent to live with Shonda. Now, Chelsea says he went to live with Shonda because he did not want to grow up and be an adult. He wanted everyone to take care of him, and that's what Shonda was willing to do. Chelsea said that Paul is absolutely not autistic, and that at one point he was going to be diagnosed as a psychopath, but they couldn't do it because he was underage. Okay, so now we have Paul asking his stepmother, Trish, if she can tell Chelsea to stop trying to contact the judge. What was Chelsea trying to do? Most likely, she was trying to provide information, like victim impact information, essentially saying, like, I want you to know that Paul is not a good person, that he's done a lot of shitty things in the past, and we're going to hear more about what those shitty things are from this interview. Once again, I have been very much on board in wanting to show all of you, which I will be doing in a future video, why I think that Paul does fall on the autism spectrum. But here I just want to provide information that we have different family members coming forward and giving us their own interpretations of what was going on with Paul, and it does not sound good, not in any way, shape, or form.
I don't know. I feel like I'm already being criticized enough for my decisions. And I'm punishing myself for it too. I don't need more weight.
I mean, people got their own feelings about things that happened. And the bottom line is you could have helped your brother and you didn't. And a lot of people are angry and upset with you for that.
I know.
And I'm going to be straight up honest with you. Chelsea blames you. Millie blames you. And I didn't know that Chelsea had contacted a judge. I wouldn't put it past Millie. She's very angry with you.
The lawyer said
and I haven't.
It's her. And I already had one thing in my police report from Chelsea. So. I don't think Lexi is. I don't know how she feels about any of this.
She blames you too. I'm sorry, she does. Y'all were all raised to look out for each other and to protect each other, and you didn't do that. You added to his pain and his torture, and that makes people angry. It makes me angry. I've told you that.
I know.
And all you had to do was tell somebody, and you didn't. I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm just being honest with you. And I love you. You know I love you.
Yeah.
I don't understand what happened. I don't.
I don't either.
And it makes... But I have not said anything negative about you.
What's going on? Why I didn't? Every time I try, I come up blank.
What I think happened. Shonda gave him permission to enact these sick punishments and fantasies. Shonda gave him permission to let out the worst of what was inside of him. Instead of seeing that this was a son who needed help, a man who at the age of 18 was not acting like he was 18. Instead of getting some intervention, instead of saying, oh my God, why didn't I help him before this? It's like the two of them fed off of each other and their own deep mental health issues. We've already learned that unfortunately, Shonda Vander Ark was subjected to these kinds of punishments, specifically ice baths, from her own foster family growing up. And there's still a big question mark around Shonda's mom for me. I've done a lot of research. I did a deep dive talking about Shonda's grandmother, who was a wealthy heiress. But Shonda's mom, there's just so little information out there about her. Many people have said that she was dealing with addictions to drugs and alcohol. And I did show all of you that she tried to kill her own mother. All right. So there's just a lot of things going on here. But Paul was deeply damaged and from my point of view, unable to understand the world around him without some kind of intervention. Yes, he did horrible things, and he probably liked doing some of them, and that is really sad and terrible. And he still doesn't get the kind of feelings the rest of us would have if something like this happened. Yeah, it's really sad. This is a case in which there are so many levels to what's going on. It has to be torn apart bit by bit. I have so much more to show you, specifically interviews with other people who were around the family and teachers who have a lot to say about the relationship between Paul and Timothy. I want to take a look at all of that with you. But for now, I'm just going to let you listen to the rest of this call, and I'll see you back again tomorrow as we head down another rabbit hole.
With the text back and forth with your mom, it seems like you hated Timothy.
Do what?
With the text back and forth with your mom, it sounds like you hated Timothy.
I can't. No.
You talked about how you couldn't stand him, that you were tired of him. You wanted to hit him, kick him, hurt him.
Things
And all you wanted
anger
was,
aren't always rational.
I understand that. But what did he do that made you so angry? I still don't even know.
I don't either.
I'm not trying to beat you up, Paul.
I know.
I hope you get some help. I think you need it.
Yeah. I love you, Mama.
I love you too, baby. I do.
The sentencing is on the 26th. I'm not sure when I'm going to be shipped out, but anyway.
I love you.
I love you and I miss you.
I miss you too. Stop talking to people. Okay?
Okay. I'll talk to you soon, Mama.
Okay. Bye, baby. I love you.
I love you too.